Hello, my friend, and welcome to my very first YouTube BookTube video. It's my premiere, and I am very excited. I never would have thought that I'm going to make these videos, but I'm happy that I jumped over my own shadow, and here I am, and I really hope you're going to enjoy it. My name is Leonie. I'm 25 years old and I live in New York City, so fingers crossed that we don't hear the sirens from outside. I don't really hear them, but I think you might, so I hope it's not too much of a distraction. But yeah, we have to work around that. You might hear a little accent in my voice, and that's because I'm originally from Germany. I've been living in the US for the past 5 years, and as you can guess, my hobby is reading. I don't have many people in my life that love to read as much as I do, so when I'm done, I usually just put the book to the side and move on, but that feels wrong. And apart from reading, I love to give my opinions on just about anything, so I guess it was inevitable that one day I would make a YouTube video like this. So yeah, I thought I'll show you what I read this past month in September. There are about 5 books and maybe a forewarning. So usually my books are all over the place. I like to read just about anything. I'm not the biggest fan of romance, I have to admit, but every now and then I give it a try. I love thrillers and mysteries, but I want to read more like fantasy also, or even nonfiction, anything. So if you have recommendations, please let me know. I'm always looking for new books to discover, and I would love to give them a try. But yeah, let's get started with this month. So the first book that I read was Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. And Agatha Christie is just, the queen of mystery, and I agree, I just love her books. I think she's the most widely published author of all time, outsold only by the Bible and Shakespeare. If that doesn't say something, I don't know. In this book, one of her main characters in a lot of books is the detective Hercule Poirot. He's like a quirky little odd guy, actually from Belgium, and he's a detective. And in this book, he's on the Orient Express, on a train that goes from Istanbul to Paris, I believe. And he's just going home. He's not on a mission or anything. And on the train, there are a whole bunch of other passengers from all over Europe and the US. One of them is a millionaire called Wretched. And yeah, things happen and the train gets stuck because there's a huge snowstorm, and so they're isolated there in the middle of nowhere. Nobody can get to them, they can't get out. And in this snowstorm, the Mr. Wretched gets stabbed, gets killed. So now Hercule Poirot has to figure out who did it. And yeah, I mean, I love mystery, so this is right up my alley. And actually the third book I read by Agatha Christie. I just love, for example, in this one, the setting, like murder on a train that's snowed in. It's just so great, and it really makes me want to travel. So it's like a travel recommendation for me. I want to book my next vacation now and go on a train this route if it's available. But her stories, they always follow the same pattern. So a crime happens, and Detective Hercule Poirot gathers information, conducts interviews, and all such things, and then in the end does a lot of thinking and then presents the killer or the guilty party. So really, it's very slow. It's not like a lot of action, but I like that because I love to find the little clues and then guess who did it in the end. And this time actually I figured it out, but like maybe 5 pages before it was revealed, so I don't know if that really counts, but I enjoyed it. The one thing I will say with her novels, there's so many characters introduced in the beginning that it is really tough. You have to really focus and pay attention the whole time if you want to solve it. I would say this book is a book for anybody who loves Scooby-Doo, the show Scooby-Doo with the dog, and likes to figure out who, committed the crime, or what's the board game? I think it's called Clue. you know, if you love those kinds of things, picturing, like figuring out yourself who did it, then you will love this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Let's move on to the next. The next one I read is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I hope I say this right. It is a book that's taking place during World War II, and actually there are different time periods. So one of the major one is the 1944 Battle of Saint-Malo in France, where the Allies are trying to fight back the Nazis that have occupied France in that region. That is one major part, but there are also other time periods, so the years leading up to the war and a little bit after too. And we follow 2 characters. One is a boy called Werner Fenning. He's German, and he's an orphan. He grows up in an orphanage in a mining town in Germany. His father actually died in that mine, and they never found the body. And under the Nazi regime, all boys in that region, age 15, have to go in that mine and start working there. So it's like his biggest fear to go down there, you know, where his father died. So one day, because he's very interested in radios, he gets a chance to repair the radio of a high general. And he sees his talent and, you know, has some thoughts going on there and sends him to military school, which Werner's very happy about because he just wants anything but not go down in those mines. So he gladly goes, but of course that leads to him being drafted into the war. And yeah, his job is basically with radio technology to seek out members that take part in the resistance. We also follow the story, apart from Vienna, of a girl in France. Her name is Marie-Laure. She lives in Paris and she's blind. Her father works at the Museum of Natural History. And when the Nazis come and occupy France, they have to flee, and they flee to Saint-Malo, where their uncle lives. And the museum is like distributing a lot of their treasures because they don't want them to fall into Nazi hands. So they actually travel with a diamond, a very precious stone that a certain German that you'll meet throughout the book is very interested in and will give anything to get it. So those are the 2 storylines, and at some point they intersect. And yeah, this book, I really enjoyed it too. The language is probably what stands out the most. It's very poetic. There's a lot of metaphors, a lot of images. Yeah, it took me a little bit to get into it because of the language, because I wasn't used to it, and a lot of vocabulary I didn't know. I'm not sure if that's because I'm German, but eventually I did, and then I enjoyed it. What I like most about this book is really the characters and the character development. I love them, even the supporting characters. And this book really shows, like, for example, in the German school, how cruel they are and what this cruelty does to some of the boys and how others thrive under it. Or we see like how old grandmas take part in the French resistance, and that were just parts that I loved. I have to say, however, that I expected to be more emotional reading this book. I expected it to be more emotionally captivating. That I didn't have. However, I really liked the story. It was a slow read, but the characters were just fascinating to me. So all in all, definitely a recommend. I gave it also 4 out of 5 stars. Moving on. Blackwater Rising by Attica Locke. I hope that's also how I said it. I should have looked up all these names before. I did not. Next time I will do this. Something to improve on. All right, so this book, I feel bad because I did not like it, and I should have read the back before. I just know that I wouldn't have liked it just reading this. So it's not really fair because it's not my kind of book, but I'll keep it short. The story is about Jay Porter, who is an African-American lawyer in Houston in the early 80s. He somehow becomes witnesses a crime, and instead of going to the police because he's afraid that they will suspect him or something will happen to him because of his skin color, he does some investigations himself, and of course that leads into danger, and the investigation leads him into the elite ranks of the oil industry in Houston. And at that time there's actually a lot of There are a lot of things going on, political, and the oil workers are organizing strikes, you know, a lot going on. But anyways, yeah, the character was just not for me. I'm not interested in struggling lawyers, and I know that, so I shouldn't have read it. His life was just, he was struggling with work, struggling with money. The marriage to his wife didn't seem happy at all. Just everything about him was very miserable, and he was a miserable character. So, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I just want to shake him and be like, you know, life is not that horrible. But yeah, so I don't enjoy these horrible, miserable characters. Also, I found the crime not very interesting. It didn't catch me, and just the oil industry I wasn't interested in. However, there were certain parts where there are backflashes here about Jay Porter's youth, where he was very active in the civil rights movement, and he was a very important figure there. So we see some of that, and that's what was interesting, and that's what kept me going. But other than that, it wasn't for me. I think that maybe somebody who's interested in lawyers and maybe more politics and the oil industry in the 80s, then this is for you, but it just wasn't for me. So just 2 out of 5 stars for this one. Okay, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. Whew, this one made me feel a lot. There's a lot going on here. The main character in this book is Charlie. Charlie is 15 years old, he goes to high school, and he's an outsider and a little weird and awkward, and this book is written from his perspective. He writes anonymous letters, so it's kind of like a diary. You learn from how it is, you know, from his eyes, how it is to be a wallflower. And he talks about, you know, just how it is for him finding friends, taking drugs for the first time, the first love, first sexual experiences, all that. So coming of age in a way, but we just follow him throughout this one school year. So I just loved the character Charlie, how he wrote. He's so adorable and so lovable. I will say that how he writes, it sounds more like a 12-year-old younger person, not 15. And I actually thought throughout the whole book that he was on the spectrum or autistic or something like that. But apparently that wasn't the case. But that's what I pictured throughout the book. So if you don't mind that the voice doesn't, you know, so I didn't mind that the voice doesn't match, you know, that what you would expect of a normal 15-year-old. And I'll just give you a short quote here to show you how he sounds like. I didn't feel like reading that night, so I went downstairs and watched a half-long-hour commercial that advertised an exercise machine. They kept flashing a 1-800 number, so I called it. The woman who picked up the other end of the phone was named Michelle, and I told Michelle that I was a kid and did not need an exercise machine, but I hoped she was having a good night. That's when Michelle hung up on me, and I didn't mind a bit. That's kind of how his voice sounds. But you know, this book is not lovey-dovey. There are heavy topics in there, from suicide to sexual orientation, sexual assault, violence. You know, they're heavy topics, and a lot of them. So with my emotions, I was really all over the place, from being so happy to crying to upset to completely puzzled. I was completely puzzled sometimes. So, you know, it makes you feel a lot. My critique point here is the ending. I did not like. I would have loved if there was just a happy ending and, you know, the good would have ended on a positive note, but in the end it took a big turn and it changed the meaning of the whole book, the last events. And I was really I couldn't believe it. I was reading it and my whole mood changed, my whole body language, everything. So yeah, but overall, you know, it's a very emotional read. And I looked at some of the reviews online. They're either very positive or very negative. And yeah, I mean, that just makes me think of a quote from Fran Lebowitz. I don't know if you know her, but she said that she rather reads a book that makes her furious and she wants to toss it into a corner of the room than a book that doesn't make her feel anything at all. And yeah, I agree. I mean, literature to me is there to make you feel something, to evoke emotions, not always to be like the most perfect writing or, you know, the most perfect plot. So to me, this book did that, definitely. I felt everything. So I want to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Well, last but not least, we have Carrie by Stephen King. So a horror novel. And I have read one book by Stephen King, but it was his nonfiction book on writing, which is part biography. And in that book, he talks about writing Carrie. He actually, when he wrote it, he tossed the manuscript in the trash can, and his wife picked it up and was reading it and said, no, this is good, keep going. And it ended up being his first major, you know, his breakthrough, his first published novel, I think. So I thought, okay, this will be my first fiction read by Stephen King. And yeah, what can I tell you? Whew, this book, it's about Carrie. And Carrie is a girl that she goes to high school. She's being bullied a lot. She doesn't have friends. She's just an outsider. And at home, she lives with her mother. Her father has died, and her mother is a religious fanatic. So those are both of her worlds. And one day at school, the bullying reaches a new level. It's so bad. Something happens. That's the first scene in this book. And something happens that makes something in her head click. And all of a sudden, she develops these telekinetic powers, so she can move things with her mind. Of course, some of the people that were bullying her get in trouble, and some of them, you know, actually feel remorse and feel bad about it, while others, and one girl in particular, wants revenge on Carrie for getting in trouble for bullying her. So the events, like, you know, move on, and they reach their climax at prom, at the school prom, where something terrible happens, another horrible, bullying act, and it just makes Carrie snap. And it says behind her, telekinetic powers become a weapon of horror and destruction. And yeah, so this book, I mean, I was looking, it was the end of September, I was in the mood for Halloween, so I wanted something horror, and horror is what I got. I mean, Stephen King is one of the best writers in that genre. He really, like, I felt repulsed at points. I felt the horror, and he's just so good at showing the worst human traits that we have. And yeah, I mean, kids can be so cruel. I mean, they were like in high school, but bullying, it breaks my heart to read it. And yeah, after this, I definitely needed a lighter read. But I got everything that I wanted, you know, from a horror novel. So if you love it, you'll like this. I give it also 4 out of 5 stars. I'm sorry, it's all 4 out of 5 stars apparently today. But yeah, it was a good start, and I'll definitely read more Stephen King books. So let me know maybe which one I should read next if you're a Stephen King fan. And yes, that was it. Those were the books that I read. If you've read some of them, or you know, have some opinions on them, please let me know below. I'd love to hear what you think. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you'll be back. And I wish you a great week, and all the best. See you next time.